So the story of Tony Parsons is very straightforward. Let's say I was born in London,
Yeah.
and grew up in a suburb of London. I had parents that were very fond of each other. They weren't religious, but we grew up in that sort of open family feeling.
Yeah.
And I grew up there and lived there for some many years. And then later on, I learned how to be a builder with my father. I was at school, obviously, and I became a builder with my father. He was a builder.
Right.
I didn't know what to do with my life, so I naturally fell into that.
Right.
And then I got married and had children, and a little later on I started my own building business. My father became ill and then later died, and I started my own building business in London, which was very successful for quite a few years, and I made a lot of money. I always joke with my audience about having a Ferrari, and funny enough I did have a Ferrari and a yacht and a swimming pool, the whole thing. But later on, I walked out of all of that when I had children, but they were by then in their 20s, or in their late teens, and I left all of that and went and lived in a commune, the Osho commune.
Right, yeah.
And then after.
How were you drawn to that? Can I ask?
I was drawn to it because I enjoyed his very early tapes, his very early discourses. I found very exciting and pure in some way or other.
Yeah.
At that time, of course, I was a seeker.
Right.
Let's be clear about that. I'm still a seeker.
Mm-hmm.
Had something had happened to me previously in a park, which in a way was a sort of enlightenment, but it was only an awakening or a glimpse.
Yeah.
So always there was this seeking energy. Even when I was a kid, I had this seeking energy, this sense that there was something else beyond just what the appearance of the world.
Right, yeah.
It was telling me something.
Yeah.
I knew it was something huge and almost unimaginable, but I knew it was there. So a lot of my life I spent seeking the answer to what that was. Later on, when I left the commune and walked away from all of that, then I was on my own up in Wiltshire for quite a time.
Yeah.
And then later on in that, I started writing a book. At this time, Claire Park, my wife, and I had met, and we were together.
Yeah.
And we also started a publishing business. By then, of course, I'd sold my building business, so I started a publishing business. And then that was quite successful. It was very successful.
Yeah.
Because there's a part of this character that enjoys business, enjoys the game
it sounds like it,
of business.
Yeah.
And that was very successful. And then later on, I wrote a book called The Open Secret, which then brought about a meeting in London. After about a couple of years of it being published, I was invited to London to talk to 5 people in a flat in Dulwich. And then one of them invited me to a house in Hampstead.
Right.
And I went there a few weeks later and there were 35 people there.
Yeah. And
the whole thing just snowballed.
Wow.
And it snowballed to the extent that we had to sell the publishing business. And from then on, I've Claire and I run this whole organisation, which is related to speaking in Europe. I used to speak in America, but mainly speaking in Europe, and running residentials, and that brings us up to the present day.
Fantastic, fantastic. I must ask you about what, in fact, one of my previous interviewees called, and forgive me for calling it this, you may have a different word for it, a sort of burning bush moment when you were in the park in Balham, is that right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us, maybe tell us a little bit, first of all, how, was there any sort of lead up to that, and what was happening, and then what actually, so far as you can, tell us what actually happened in the park.
Right, at the time that I was a seeker, I would have said there was a lead up to it. Later on, it became absolutely clear that the satori, or glimpse of oneness, had absolutely no relationship with anything that went before it.
Right.
But that's part of my message anyway.
Yeah.
So I was wandering around in a park and in general thinking about what I was going to do next and where I was going to go, and suddenly all I can say is that the me that was wandering around in the park simply vanished. There was no question about there being anyone or any awareness or any consciousness there in terms of a centre that recognised anything more anymore. There was no centre, there was no me, there was nothing but wholeness, what I would call wholeness. Now that's where we get to the bit where it's utterly impossible to describe that. I think in my book I called it unconditional love.
Yeah.
But nothing in the park changed, but everything did. So suddenly there was just absolute togetherness, but not for anyone. There was just that instant wholeness, oneness, unconditional
Did you
love.
have any feelings in
No,
your
I
body?
didn't.
Or
I didn't
any
have anything because
energetic
there was
sensation?
no
Nothing?
one there. There was
no
nothing
one there?
there.
Wow.
No, there was no one there. That's what my message is about.
Okay, cool.
There was simply no one to experience this or see it.
Right.
It just was that. It was just what it was,
Mm.
without anyone. Completely impersonal energy, but an impersonal energy which is absolute love. Indescribable, totally indescribable. And then I came out at the other end of it, as Tony Parsons really, wondering at what had just seemed to happen, but not really being able to know it.
Yeah.
And then I went on from there, again trying to own what had happened.
Yeah.
Of course, you can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then I learnt through the years of seeking that actually wholeness, oneness, has absolutely nothing to do with the individual and nothing to do at all with any sort of seeking. So that in a way that was the fundamental principle of what I was then talking to people about. So when I started talking to people about this, then something else had happened. Then you could say had happened, although of course it doesn't happen to anyone, as far as I'm concerned. And that's what I call liberation. So liberation happened at the time that the Open Secret was being written, and then what followed that were these talks.
Can I just clarify? The Open Secret was written after the Ballon Park.
Oh, years and years after.
Years later.
Oh, years.
So what was going on in the meantime? I mean,
me seeking.
You
in
continued
the
seeking.
ocean.
Yeah.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
I wanted to have what I wasn't there.
Did you try to go back and have that same
Yes,
experience?
I wanted to have wholeness, although I wasn't there. I wanted to own it.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be for me.
Yeah.
What I later realised was I would never have it. No one ever has it. What I realised is there's no such thing as a liberated person, an enlightened person. So that's, again, we'll probably come on to that.
Yeah,
But
indeed.
then later on, I was still a seeker. So I went into the Osho commune, I was looking at other things, meditating, and all of that. And then much later on, when the publishing business was going on and we were living in Wiltshire together, suddenly something else, well, you could say liberation happened. I don't like that term because it doesn't actually happen.
Yes.
It's a paradox.
Yes.
It's a total paradox. What in fact, the nearest I can say to you is that suddenly this whole individual simply collapsed or died.
Wow.
Yeah, there was nothing left of me, the self, the I, whatever you want to call it, the individual. There was nothing left of it at all. All there was beingness.
So was there any run-up to the book?
No.
The book just... And how did the book come about then, given the time difference?
Well, I tried to write a very long book because I was still a seeker. I thought I could write a very big book about the nature of, or the meaning of life.
Okay.
I realised halfway through it was absolute rubbish. I threw it away and went and played golf. When I say that, I just gave up the whole idea of communicating anything at all.
Yeah.
Because I still was in that thrall before liberation. And then suddenly one day, this whole simplicity of the Open Secret arose, and I wrote it very simply over a period of time. I was still in a transition between two worlds, really. And then that was published, and then as that was published, and I started talking to people, the whole sense of identity simply fell away. It was a complete collapse. But I have to be very clear with you that apparent happening to no one, apparent happening to no one, was despite what happened before, not because of it. It had no, my seeking and all of those things that apparently went before, which are a story, totally a story,
Yes.
have no relevance to liberation as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Liberation has nothing to do with time, history, seeking, or an individual.
Oh.
And that's the radical nature of this message. It's fairly, well, it's very rare to come across a message like this. Very rare. Most apparently dualistic, non-dual, apparently non-dual or advice messages are directed towards a person. They're an attempt to help a person find something.
Yes.
This
by their nature.
This absolutely isn't. It doesn't attempt to help anyone. It doesn't even recognise that there's anyone to help.
So this communication is not really helping anyone at all?
Not at all.
Yeah.
They might think it is, but it isn't. The whole idea that there is somebody, a seeker to help, find something called enlightenment is totally misconceived. And it's what drives seeking. It's the drive. It drives all sorts of seeking, teaching and becoming.
Let me come back to that because that's fascinating. I want to challenge you slightly on that one. But when did the meetings start? That was before you wrote the book, right?
No, they started after.
That was after the Open Secret. So
because we were publishers.
Oh,
we were
that's right, yes.
And we put the Open Secret in our publication as a book.
And then people read it and they wanted to hear more, right? Yeah. Okay. And tell us a little bit, in case, the case that anyone watching this who, are not entirely familiar with what you do apart from your books and, having maybe seen your website. But tell us a little bit about how these meetings work and how they started and how they've sort of proliferated, as I understand it.
Oh, amazingly.
Yeah.
Well, they have no formal shape to them.
You've never run a workshop. It's always like been a meeting. You've never actually sat at the front and said...
Yes, so I just sit with people and talk. There isn't a workshop.
And it's like a question and answer session.
Yes, it isn't a workshop because there's no work to do.
Right.
It's totally, utterly without prescription.
Okay.
All it is a sharing, a description of something. It's a description. It's not a teaching. This message is absolutely not a teaching because there isn't anybody to teach anything to. But what seems to happen is that when that description is shared and there's an illumination that comes out of it, what it can do is expose you could say the illusion of there being an individual and a seeker that has to find something. And then that whole sense of there being an identity or a centre or having an energy, a seeking energy, simply seems, not for everyone of course, but it seems a great deal to collapse. And then in a way you could say that people that happens to when there's a resonance with this, not their own resonance, hearing of this is beyond them. Suddenly the whole identity can simply die as it did with me, and there's nothing left. So I'm a killer. No, I'm not. But the message is essentially, is in one way, is a destructive message in terms that it destroys, it exposes and destroys the illusion that there is someone who has lost something.
Well, it threatens all individuality,
Yeah,
doesn't it? I mean, it threatens this concept of me.
Yeah.
It threatens this concept of there being a me and a you sitting here now.
Absolutely.
So have you found that with this message that people have actually almost, not say reacted in a hostile way, but it's almost like it becomes defensive because it's almost like, what am I if I don't have a personal identity?
Absolutely. There are two things that happen in meetings. One is that some people really hate this message.
Yeah.
How dare you say there's no spiritual ladder, I'm nearly at the top rung.
I'm nearly at the top already.
Yeah, I'm nearly at the top, I'm almost at the top. And the other thing is, of course, personally, how dare you propose that there's no individual here with free will and choice? Of course I have free will and choice. And it's interesting these days that neuroscientists are now discovering what I'm talking about.
Indeed.
But that's one reaction. The other reaction can be a middle one where, well, this is interesting, but I'm not sure whether it's quite for me. It's a bit confronting and so on. And then the other one is that there's a sudden resonance with this. It rings a bell for so many people because, of course, it is the actual reality. So somewhere this is being heard, but not by the seeker. The individual doesn't hear this. This message is not for the individual. It absolutely isn't. I actually say to people, you're at a meeting which is, for the individual, utterly pointless. It's great.
And they still pay. Excellent, excellent. That's beautiful. In terms of your books, though, isn't there an element there that people who will, like I was drawn to your book, The Open Secret, originally, as we mentioned off air earlier, isn't there an element that, in a sense, you need, being a sort of, needy sort of word, seekers to actually connect with the book? Isn't that right? I mean, is there a sort of, is there a bit of a dichotomy there?
No, there isn't, because in terms of there being a story about there being seekers and books and finding something in the book that leads the seeker on, that's a story. The message is saying that that's an unreality.
Right.
Now, this is a very paradoxical message.
Yeah.
Because actually what it's saying is that although you said to me, well, you're sitting there and I'm sitting here, actually all it is an appearance. This is an appearance.
Yeah.
This is nothing appearing as this.
Yeah.
And there isn't anyone in there, and there isn't anyone in here that is doing this. I'm not doing this. It's what's apparently happening.
Yeah.
It's all an appearance out of nothing. So the books, the meeting places, the people who respond are simply nothing or wholeness appearing as that.
Right.
There's nobody running it. And there's no need for it to happen at all. It wouldn't matter if it happened or didn't happen.
Yeah, wow.
It's only the individual that has the belief that in a story, first of all, and the belief that the story about themselves and the world is significant.
Yeah.
It's only the individual that has an investment in something being meaningful and significant, and that's the problem. That's the dilemma. There is nothing that's significant. There is only what there is. This doesn't have to be significant to be a flower. It just is what it is. And strangely,
we make it significant.
We would like to, because we want it to have a meaning. It doesn't need to have a meaning to be what it is. And neither does that, and neither does this. And that's the dilemma for this.
For those watching who are, let's say, new to Tony Parsons, can you just give us, Tony, be careful with my words here, just give us a quick sort of overview of what the message is. I mean, for someone coming straight in now to this interview and saying, well, I've been listening so far, but I don't actually understand. What is the message?
It's very simple, though. It's a twofold message in one way. It is a twofold message. The first part of it is to expose the illusion of there being such a thing as an individual with free will and choice and the capacity to become enlightened. In simple terms. Or even to make this story work, even in the world. The illusion is that I am an individual with free will and choice. I can make my story work, or I can become enlightened forever. So that's the first thing it does, is expose that as an illusion. And the second thing that it attempts to do, and only attempts to do, is to describe the nature of wholeness. The difficulty of that is that actually the nature of wholeness is unknowable. When there is no one left and there is only wholeness, all there is unknowing. So to try and describe that which is unknowable is actually, of course, impossible. But in some way or other, there's an attempt to describe it. Because what it does is it resonates with people. There aren't any people, but there is only wholeness, but people appear, and they appear as that which is seeking wholeness. But somewhere already there's a knowing that there is only wholeness. So there's some sort of resonance. And essentially, like we were talking before at tea, this is not about concepts and understanding. It absolutely isn't. Having clarity about this is not liberation.
Although we are sharing concepts as we speak, because that's the nature of the conversation,
there's something else going on as well.
What else is going on, Tony?
Energetic.
Okay.
Essentially, I say to people, you come to this meeting, we can share questions and answers and but the idea that you go away with this understing or believing it is just ridiculous. Forget it. But essentially what's happening is But in the sense of having a separate identity, there is a contracted energy. There's a feeling of living. That's how I felt, that I lived in this skin. I'm in here, you're over there, and that's over there, and the world's out there. So I'm in a contracted state like this. But essentially what happens, it's an amazing thing, is that the boundlessness, which is wholeness, that contraction softens and somehow expands out. So essentially that's really, you could say that talking is an excuse for something else to happen. But
I understand that, yeah.
As you quite rightly also said before we did this, nevertheless words, sentences have an energy.
What sort of people come to your meetings and what do they go away with?
A huge cross-section of people, from bone surgeons to road sweepers.
Fantastic.
It's amazing. No, it is beautiful, because it is really just anybody. Quite a lot of people come and never come again, and I completely understand that. Some people come and go away for 3 or 4 years, and somehow some sort of seed has taken place, and they come back. Quite a lot of people at the moment are coming back after not coming for 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
A lot of people come and stay, and it goes on, and they're sort of fascinated by it. In a way, they're fascinated by the paradox of it, and the fact that it's not get-atable. And they're also fascinated, and it's a very powerful thing, that there's no agenda in the meeting. There's nobody trying to sell them anything. There's nobody trying to get them to believe anything. There's something fascinating about that, and different, and rare. And then there's another lot of people that come, and the whole thing just collapses, and it's all over. But usually over a period of what we think of as time. But I do know of 3 cases where people have come to meetings and it's been all over in the meeting.
Yeah, fantastic.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Somewhere there's already a readiness there. And the majority of people for whom this seems to happen, although it doesn't happen to the person, come over a period of time, go through a sort of awakening thing like I did.
So you have people who have similar or not dissimilar experiences to your own in the past.
It's just an experience, but I'm
not quite sure which word to use, but what would you say?
That's something that's personal.
Yeah.
It's the only thing I can call it is liberation from the illusion of being imprisoned in separation.
Okay.
And that's happening hugely. Hugely. It's amazing to us. It's wonderful.
Fantastic, yeah. You talk about, I don't remember now where I read it. Either it's on your website, maybe one of your essays, or possibly one of your books. You talk about, which I found fascinating, enabling people to see, what was the expression? Enabling people to see a resonance, I think you said.
Well, it's not really. It doesn't enable anyone. As I said,
that was what I was curious about.
This is not an enabling thing for someone.
Okay.
Because the seeker, the individual, can never resonate with this. The nature of individuality is that it only lives in story. Individuality is story. If there's no story, there's no individual. It's an artificial, inconstant state. So it can't hear that there's nothing. It can't hear this message. It can't resonate with this. But somewhere there's a resonance. It's totally impersonal resonance.
So does this mean there's no shift, whether personally or holistically? There's no holistic shift when people have this?
No shift at all.
Okay.
No.
Right, okay.
This is one of these, it's awful, this really, I can't really describe it.
No,
it's one of these things that's, in a nutshell, you could say that when suddenly the individual is no more, let's say that, dies, then there's a recognition, nobody recognises, you don't need a person for there to be recognition, there's a recognition that it's the end of something that was never actually happening.
Or that it's a realisation that the whole what has been happening has been a complete illusion. Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
So, in that sense, this has nothing to do with something, with an individual coming and being enabled for something to happen to the individual. Right. It absolutely isn't about that.
So there's no question of process. There's no question of A to B.
No. There's no.
I know you talk about other
No, there's no
sort of
path.
spiritual teachers.
Well,
I'm not calling you a spiritual teacher
no,
because I know
no,
that's not what
no.
you are, but people who have this element, if you like, of teaching how to get from A to B.
Oh,
what
they
would
are,
assume.
Yeah. They are teachers of becoming, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
dualistic teaching, that there is a person who can go along a path and find something. There's a person here, one, that can move along a path and find something else,
Right.
two,
Yeah.
which is in alignment. That's dualism.
Yeah. So what is, just to clarify for people watching, what is your unique, I don't know, I'm struggling for words here, but what is your, and I would say unique selling proposition if it was a business thing, but there's no selling. What is your uniqueness, if you like, in what you bring?
Okay, so first of all, it's not my uniqueness, and I didn't bring anything.
Okay.
This is nothing to do with Tony Parsons at all.
Okay.
But the rarity of it is that it is totally and utterly impersonal.
Mm.
It offers nothing to the individual at all.
Right.
There's nothing for sale for the individual seeker in that sense.
Yeah.
And so it's a totally impersonal message. It has, and in a nutshell, that's what it is. It's simply a description that's given to no one.
When I first read your books and your message, and because something that I've, without really seeking it, something that I've been drawn to is quantum physics. And this whole thing around everything is energy, everything is vibration. And in fact, even the quantum physicists are saying now, look, what we see around us in terms of objectivity, this flower is not real. I mean, it's not, it's simply, if you like, an interpretation of our five senses. We come in, well, you tell me what you think, but that's one explanation as I understand it. So there's an element of, it's because of our, if you like, maybe conditioning, or because of our makeup as humans, we come in with this mind and this body and these eyes and ears and feelings and so on. We see everything in terms of a third dimensional reality, an objective reality. Whereas in fact, in wholly subject reality, there's nothing but, as you would say, I think, energy, right?
Absolutely. Quantum physicists have now discovered and are establishing one amazing thing, and that is that these flowers come out of nothing. They are actually nothing, appearing as flowers. Now, in what I call the natural reality, that's all there is, just that.
Yeah.
For the individual can't see the flowers as they really are, because the individual sees them as separate objects. So the individual seeker lives in continuous dissatisfaction without necessarily recognising it. The freedom is that when that individual energy that sees everything as separate suddenly collapses, there is everything and nothing. It is absolutely apparent that everything is out of nothing. The other interesting thing about science these days, that's part of what's coming to the same conclusion as this message. The other interesting thing is that neuroscientists have now absolutely established, you don't hear much about it.
You don't read it on
there are lots of books around now in the last 5 years, started in Frankfurt. They've now absolutely established that there is no such thing as a separate individual with free will and choice. There simply isn't.
I can understand the no such thing as a separate individual in terms of the everything is energy and everything is vibration. But where does free will and choice come from anyway?
It's an idea.
It's simply a belief.
Of course it is, within the story of the individual. The individual grows up and believes it has free will and choice. It's now been established that actually everything that happens in this world happens up there and has nothing to do with this artificial construct that makes. The brain makes an artificial construct at a very early age to protect it from what it assumes is a separate world. So it's based on you, the individual, are based on an assumption that's false.
And everything is an interpretation.
And actually, everything is just energy happening, and there's no such thing as a separate me that can choose to do anything. That's why, as far as I'm concerned, teachings of becoming are based on a misconception. They're based on the misconception that you, for instance, can now go and choose to meditate in order to get somewhere. It's dualism. Pure dualism.
In fact, any teaching Isn't that true? Any teaching presupposes separation, presupposes individuality.
And free will and choice.
Right, absolutely. And in fact, any belief presupposes individuality.
Absolutely.
But let me ask you talk a lot about freedom and liberation and enlightenment. Don't they presuppose individuality?
Of course they do, and they talk in a non-dual way. A lot of apparently non-dual teachers and advisor teachers speak in a non-dual way. All this is wholeness.
Yeah.
And then they tell you how to get there. That's where it collapses. They don't even, some of them don't even tell you how to get there. They try to suggest by changing your belief systems or making wonderful, beautiful, idealistic proposals that somewhere or other you'll shift your idea about who you are and what you are. But it's still basically a personal message. It's still saying to someone, I will teach you what you are or your true nature, and then you will find that you're in wholeness. There's no possibility of that.
You talk about, Tony, life happening. Life happens, you say. Can you explain this to me? Because I've been slightly sort of puzzled about that.
Okay, so when...
in relation to the creative process, and I'll come back to that.
That's fine.
Yeah.
When the individual energy collapses, when the artificial construct of the individual energy collapses, there's nothing left. There's no experiencer, there's no awareness, there's no consciousness, there's no centre.
There's no consciousness?
No.
Wow.
In terms of consciousness being awareness of,
or
consciousness of. For me, the word consciousness points to being conscious of, knowing of, or aware of.
Okay, as an individual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, even as a... or let's call it or a centre that is aware of you sitting there.
Yeah, okay.
Or conscious of you sitting there.
Yeah.
That collapses. All that's left is what is apparently happening.
Yeah.
So in this thing, there's no locality here at all.
Yeah.
There isn't anything here.
Yeah.
There is only what's happening. So there's these hands going like that body, that head nodding, the flowers and sounds.
Yeah.
There is only what's apparently happening.
Yeah.
There's nobody that's doing that. There's nobody that's aware of that.
Yeah.
Within that, they can be functioning. This thing can go and make a cup of tea, but making a cup of tea is what's apparently happening.
Yeah.
So all of that, life goes on just as it did before for no one.
You see, I'm fascinated by this because one of the things that I've actually found personally quite attractive as a if you like, as a, again, words, right, but as a theory or as an application, as a way of life, is that to surrender to what happens, to surrender to life. In other words, not to do or to make the effort to do, to try to be something, it's all this element of trying, because we're all conditioned to believe we have to do this to be successful, etc., which is fine for most people. I'm not knocking it. I mean, it's again, I won't say it's a choice,
it's
but
a good story.
It's a good story, right? But I'm quite attracted to the idea of, allow life to happen.
Yeah.
But how does that fit with the creative process? Because I think you say in one of your books about, manifestation is our creation. Now, what do you mean by that?
I have never said that.
No?
If it's in there, it's a mistake.
It shouldn't be.
It's a misprint.
Okay, it's a misprint.
So there are two things really.
How does the creative process work then in a oneness reality?
It's very simple.
Yeah.
It's what happens.
It's just what happens. There's
no
creativity.
identity linked to it at all.
Right.
And the other thing I think that you were saying was that in some way or other there could be a surrender to life or an allowing. But that is based on the idea that there's someone that can do that.
Yes, indeed. And it's like an A to B again, isn't it? Yeah.
If you surrender to life, then you become life. Or
it's like a process.
Yeah, there's somebody who says that if you become aware of life as it is, then that is wholeness.
Yeah.
Well, who's going to do that?
Yeah.
You're back to the principle of do this, and then that arises.
Yeah. But in terms of people listening to this, I mean, I would imagine that's quite not an easy message to swallow, is it?
It's an awful message to swallow. Let's put it this way: for the individual, it's impossible to swallow. Some people say, "Oh, this is very difficult," And I say, no, it's not difficult. It's utterly impossible. When you go out of this room, don't take anything with you. There's nothing to take from this room.
Right.
There's nothing you can take home as homework or an idea that you could hold on to.
Yeah.
There's nothing to hold on to. But what you long for will never leave you. It's there now. As you open the door of your flat, you walk inside, the walking, the opening the door is what is happening.
Yeah.
What you long for is what's happening.
Yeah.
But you get in the way by thinking that it's happening to you.
But isn't that also a case of letting the longing happen? In almost, it's almost like, isn't there a letting go?
No.
That's a process, isn't it? Yeah.
There's nothing. Actually, in the end, there's nothing that happens. This is not about something happening. It isn't a message saying something has to happen. Because actually, liberation, and this is awful, I'm very sorry about this, liberation doesn't happen. It only apparently, what apparently happens is the falling away of that which longs to become liberated. Because the seeker wants to become liberated. And he's always looking for something to happen. That's its dilemma.
So is this again, please correct me if I'm wrong, is this more than just going with the flow?
Totally. It isn't going with the flow.
At all?
No. It's the end. It's about the end of you.
So but there must still be a flow of energy, because I'm still
There is an
right?
apparent flow.
There's an apparent flow.
This is all apparently happening.
Okay.
You are apparently a body sitting there. And you might apparently think that you're an individual sitting there.
Yeah.
I don't know. That doesn't matter.
But
But
it's all
But the other, the even worse part of this is, and this is the absolute ultimate paradox, is that we're sitting here going like this, and there seems to be something happening. Actually, there is nothing happening. This is no thing happening. This is no thing happening. So that, it can't be comprehended.
Let's go back to choice and free will, Tony, because again, I think this would be, for a lot of people, again, a difficult one to grasp.
Impossible.
Because almost impossible to grasp. I can't even formulate the question in a sense, but you see what I'm going with this. It's like, we have, if you like, this perceived or illusory element of free will and choice. And we have this, if you like, we have this reality or unreality that actually, it's almost like the one is dissolved within the other. There's no connection. That's what you're saying, is it? Do you follow me?
Wait a minute, I'm not quite with you. The individual construct, and free will and choice is simply a story.
Yeah, okay.
It's a dream story. It doesn't have any.
It's just something we've been conditioned to believe.
Totally, we all believing it. We all, the world's full of apparent individuals.
Right,
it's a completely artificial story.
But if there's no free will and choice, me moving my finger like that, that's just oneness moving its finger.
Happening.
It's what's happening. And even if I think to myself, I'll move that flower, again... Am I missing something?
No.
Yeah.
What's happening is that the brain is saying, move that flower.
Okay.
And then
yes.
the identity, me, takes claim of it, makes a claim of it.
Yes.
This is me moving this flower. I'm doing this.
Yes.
And actually it's just coming out of nothing. It's more difficult for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Is again related to the rich man, is the man who lays claim to everything that's happening, man or woman. I'm doing this is my life, this is my wife, this is my house, and this is my understanding of what enlightenment is, and this is my understanding of what spiritual growth is. It's all richness.
Well, that's how we're taught, isn't it? That's education in a sense.
Yeah, but there's nothing, let's be clear about this, the Empty Secret is not saying there's anything right or wrong with anything.
Right.
All it's saying is that that's what happens.
Yeah.
If there's a rich person there laying claim to everything, it's what's happening.
Yeah. Now, what's the real value of your message, Tony? Because I got a sense that, I work with clients, as you know, personally and individually, and there's a lot of stuff around fear, there's a lot of stuff around negative beliefs. Now I know all this is, you know, within your message, like an illusion, but it's like, I'm thinking to myself, and again, okay, thinking is thinking, you know, there is no end game, and yet I can see that for people who are able to, if you like, absorb the message, I won't say grasp it, I mean for people who are able to actually get to that place where they can let go. I know there's no place, right? They can let go of me, right? If they can stop being addicted to the thing. They can't.
No, me can't let go of me. All the time the me is trying to let go of me, the me gets bigger and bigger.
Okay.
The higher self tries to get rid of the self, and just becomes higher and more, you know, more spiritual and more. The me can't, the illusion can't dispel itself. And I know what the question you're going to ask, and I'm already answering.
You go on.
As far as the individual is concerned, this is of no value at all.
Right.
And not at all. As far as the individual is concerned, in the story of individuality, this is the worst message possible for them to listen, because it's about the inner.
So there's not even peace and harmony, you know?
No, there's only what happens. There was a man once...
Because everything is labelled.
There was a man once who said, unless you lose your life, you shall not gain eternal life. He was the same guy that was talking about the rich man. He knew a thing or two, old Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a sense, what I'm talking about here has always been communicated. Of course. There's nothing new about this. But it's very hidden. It's hidden behind all the dogmas. But it's there. It's in the scriptures. It's in the Gospels. It's there, but it's hidden. It's hidden for that can lift the stone a bit higher and really, uncover something. It's not available for the masses of seekers who want to be given something. The seeker wants a need fulfilled, and teachers are becoming fulfill that need by saying, look, I can give you this, and that'll get you somewhere. This isn't saying that. This is an awful message for the seeker. It's about... Actually,
I don't know if you get your comment on this, but I heard some time ago what I thought was quite a neat thing, and it was saying that life is like a game of hide and seek. You know, you take human form and you hide your truth, if you like, and truth is, I know that's the word again, you hide your essence, if you like, somewhere, and you spend your life trying to find it.
Totally.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, except that you don't hide it.
Right,
There's nothing out there, there is no intention, nothing doesn't have any intention. It doesn't, there's an argument put these days that consciousness arises as everything and then loses itself in order to re-find itself. That's a fairy story. There isn't anything out there doing anything.
So your message is not to enable people to raise consciousness?
It's not to enable people.
At all?
No.
Not to enable? It's not even to enable?
There isn't a consciousness to arise. Everything is absolutely, perfectly complete. This is complete. It doesn't need anything. Wholeness doesn't need anything. It doesn't. It's not interested in individuals becoming enlightened, because the individual that's seeking is wholeness. Seeking, struggle, longing is wholeness. Seeking, struggling, and longing.
So how do you see the role of humanity? What's the role of humanity?
It doesn't have one.
No role at all. No, not even to play the game of finding
to have
oneness.
A role is to have a story.
It is a story.
I think there's something very interesting going on in the world at the moment, if I may.
Yeah, please.
And that is that the psyche in the individual is shifting. The recent stuff that's happening in the Middle East and other things that happen is a sign of that. What's actually happening is that authority, as we have known it for many years, for thousands of years, patriarchal authority is collapsing. Actually, there's a fundamental response to that, a fundamentalist responder, but actually authority, both political and religiously, is actually collapsing. That's what we're watching, the collapse of that. When you see the things in the Middle East happening, it's an authority in a building somewhere, and in the streets there's all these people milling around. It's like people, me's, or lots of people are like life happening, saying, freedom, we want to be free, we want to be free. Okay, they're still wanting something for themselves, but it's a sign of something that's happening in the world that's very fascinating. It's frightening in that what's happening, as far as I'm concerned, is that authority is collapsing, and what's taking its place is anarchy. And, different things in the world that are happening are pointing to that. And the strange thing about the open secret message, which is no one's message, is that it's absolute pure anarchy. Because it's not fighting against anything like one would think.
Well, it dismantles all the systems.
But it's completely dismantled systems, and it doesn't recognise in any way any sort of authority. It doesn't recognise authority. There's no authority. There's no tradition. There's no hierarchy. All there is what's happening. That's why I think my sense is that I'm talking all over Europe, there's hundreds, thousands of people come to here. That wouldn't have happened 50 years ago. Because authority still had a stranglehold. The religious authority, the authority of the so-called enlightened teachers who were teaching enlightened Buddhism and all that, had an authority in them. And people are beginning to recognise that has no relevance. Fascinating.
So there's no cause and effect in your message?
Oh no. Well, there's no cause and effect. Let's be clear. There's something called a story, which comes only out of the dream. Well, it's the dream story of individuality. Within that dream story, there is apparent cause and effect.
Okay.
The cause and effect.
This is the illusion of individuality.
Something subject-object, cause and effect.
Yeah. I was wondering when I was driving down to see you, Tony, is your message in a sense a placebo? Do you know what I mean by that?
I do know what you mean, and it absolutely isn't. It's a bullet.
Okay.
It's one of the things I like that was said by Mr. Gadata.
Go on.
I like some of the stuff he said, although I find some of his stuff quite prescriptive. It's an explosion. It's an explosion. It just blows the whole sense of this up, and the story that it had, and all the ideas it had about itself and its story. And of course it completely turns over the whole social structure that we believe in.
Amazing.
It is. Amazing. In Amsterdam I'm called the Terminator.
Because you're terminating individuality.
I'm not, but this is.
No, you're not.
It's got
That's
nothing
true.
to do.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
It just comes out.
Yeah. But you are still the messenger, as I said earlier.
No, I'm not. Well, you might think that.
Who is the messenger?
There isn't one.
There isn't one.
No.
And
there isn't one because there's nothing here.
Okay.
You see, there's only what happens. So what comes out has no agenda because it's not coming from.
Okay.
Oh,
don't worry, we'll stop. Pause there. We'll start again. Don't worry.
Sorry.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that's fine.
So,
if you want to just pause for about 10 seconds and then start, and then I can cut it straight back in.
Did you actually cut the film?
Not literally, no. It's all done on the computer with
This
software.
is a card.
It's very easily. Yeah, it's a card. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll put that in the outtakes.
Yeah, do. Yeah. So you see, because there's nothing happening here, because there's no longer any pearl or centre or individual here, what is being communicated is coming out of nothing. Actually, everything comes out of nothing. Even you asking questions is actually nothing talking, but it comes through the filter of the mind that wants to ask questions. But the message is coming out of nothing. That's why there's a resonance. There's a resonance happens, but it has no agenda. So in that sense, it's completely different to there's no connection with this and what I call the personal message of becoming.
I want to talk about unconditional love, if I may, Tony, because this is something that is very dear to my heart and something that I've grasped, you might say, in connection with the workshops I do and also in relation to my coaching. You talk a bit about unconditional love in, I think, your essay, Nothing for Sale. And I think and I love the sort of last section where you talk about ultimately, you say something like ultimately it's all about love, and then I think you include a fabulous metaphor where you talk about unrequited love.
Yes.
And then how that. Can you elaborate on that? Because I think that's lovely for people to hear.
Okay, so for the individual in the individual story, which is, by the way, an inconstant state.
Right.
There's actually, even though it may be underlying and not recognised, there is a need always. There's always a dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
Because everything out in the world is seen as separate.
Mm.
So also, what it longs for, and more than anything else, is what it thinks is love.
Right.
And so it's attracted to whatever it can be attracted to find love. But essentially the impetus of that energy is a need energy. So it wants to be recompensed in the world for what it's actually lost. What it's actually lost, or thinks it's lost, is wholeness.
Is it more than that? Is it not, just hear me out on that. I mean, I'm not questioning what you're saying, but, is it actually, in a sense, being drawn back to what was, or what is, if you like, our source, which is, you could say, unconditional love? I mean,
It's not being drawn back to it, it's being continually spoken to by it.
Oh, okay.
So
it's like,
all the time, you, or the individual, is being bombarded by that which it longs for, through the five senses, through the sixth sense of feelings, and through what I call the seventh sense of thinking.
Yeah.
So everything that's happening to the individual is the love that it longs for.
Yeah.
But because the individual lives in a story about I've got to do it, it tries to find that love by, with wealth and power and women and men and whatever you like.
Yeah.
And essentially it's trying to fulfill a need that will never ever be fulfilled, because what it ultimately longs for is unconditional love, which it, as the individual, can never know. The love it wants to find, it thinks it can know. The love it really longs for is unknowable, and that's unconditional love. But unconditional love is unconditional. It's not a love that has any judgment about you or anything being. It simply is a love that is unconditional, all-embracing. And in fact, it's not a love that looks down from a pink cloud and forgives people at war. Unconditional love is
accepting everything.
Is war.
Accepting everything.
Yeah.
As I think you say somewhere there, you're accepting Hitler, accepting
No,
tyranny,
it is,
accepting
but it is
everything.
Hitler. It is Hitler. Unconditional love is Hitler. Is terror. Is war. That it's within the nature of everything that happens. Everything, war and whatever you like, is absolute love. Right at this moment, it's speaking to both of us.
So isn't that in a sense a sub-message which people can, I know you don't want people to get a message other than your principal message, but isn't this element of, total acceptance? If we as human beings can accept everything that is, without judgment, without condition, without measurement, without analysis, without all these things that put it into boxes and, like jam jars, put labels on it. Isn't that a sort of sub-message in a sense of what you're saying?
No, because there is nobody that can do that.
There's nobody that can do that.
No,
okay.
The individual can't accept, can't know that unconditional love because it's unknown.
Right.
The only thing I do say to people is that when you leave this room, or even when you're sitting here, all there is what's happening. You're breathing, hearing this voice, da-da-da-da-da. At the end of the meeting...
But that implies a me, doesn't it? If you say you're breathing,
I know,
that's individual, isn't it?
Yeah, but what I then
breathing
to
is
say
happening.
Is that breathing is happening.
Yes,
it isn't you, and the dilemma is that you think it's happening to you.
Yes, I see.
At the end of the meeting, I might say, I can't, there's no shape to anything, is that when you leave this room, when you apparently leave this room, what you long for is with you constantly. It's constantly speaking to you. It's shouting to you and saying, hey, I'm here already. I never left.
Yeah.
And in some way or other, you think that what, going down the road is walking down the road is what's happening to you.
Yeah.
It may suddenly happen that there isn't anyone that it's happening to. It's just what it is.
Yeah.
And Pete, it's amazing. Many so-called liberations have happened. And people ring me up and say, Tony, it's amazing, because there's no one here now, but what that someone was looking for has never left them. It's always been here. It's always been here. It's what's happening. Isn't that amazing?
Fantastic, fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to ask you what you personally long for, but that would be a silly question, given that you would say to me, well, first of all, there is no Tony Parsons, right, and that again implies individuality.
Mm. Oh no, but the joke I always make is I'm longing for a Lamborghini. It was a Ferrari, but now it's a joke.
Yeah.
No, when there is no one, there is no need in that sense. Obviously, practically, when the body eats, but there's nothing in there that makes that happen. It's just what happens. But there is no longer a need, because there is only absolute love.
Do you ever think
absolute love?
Yeah.
Sitting here, it's not some amazing pink thing that comes down.
Yeah.
It's sitting here, it's this thing here.
Well, it's like an essence, isn't it?
It's totally an essence, but it's in everything. It's not just in flowers and people, it's this rug. It's everything is that. Because everything is that.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Beautiful.
And it's so simple, and in a sense it's so simple and utterly ordinary. It's not about some special, amazing, abstract notion of being in something boring called bliss all the time. It is simply that there is only what is. There is simply only what is, and that's absolute love.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about practicalities, okay? I mean, you said, I think in one of your interviews, I still brush my teeth and I do this, that and the other. I mean, do you ever start the day thinking, what am I going to do today? Or? Never. Wow, okay.
No.
You never plan the day?
No, well, planning happens.
Ah, okay.
Oh yeah, but that's what's happening.
Yeah, okay.
Planning that I'm going to go to Tesco's, buy some more sausages. No, but planning going to a meeting or
okay.
it's but it's something that happens.
Is this then a bit like, because I enjoy singing, and I've got a guy who's been teaching me singing, a fantastic guy, and he says to me, let the song come through you. Don't sing. Let the song come through you. Is there a bit of an analogy there?
There's no question at all that many people actually come and go out of this.
Yeah. Yes.
There's often time. No, and it isn't necessarily just to do with art. Singing, painting, da-da-da. It can also be to do with athletics, sport.
Right.
There's often reports of people who suddenly aren't there, and there's only what's happening. There's only running. There's only tennis.
Yeah, well.
There's only road sweeping.
Yeah.
And it's at all those levels.
Sure.
Or apparent levels.
Sure.
No question.
No differentiation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Perfect.
I mean, let's be very clear about this. In deep sleep at night, there is. The illusion of there being anyone has completely collapsed. There's nothing.
Well, that's right, because I mean,
beingness. And then most people, let's say, wake up, for the sake of simplicity, wake up in the morning. When they wake up, me rushes in. Me is reconstructed every morning by the brain. And then they wake up and think, oh, my bank balance, or she doesn't love me, or, the story starts going,
so there's no me dreaming. There's no me dreaming. What's happening?
Me is also dreaming.
Me is dreaming.
But in deep sleep, there's no.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent.
So often in this, there are, because it's an inconstant state. There's a coming and going.
Tony, I love your enthusiasm. It's so infectious.
Well, it's my passion.
It is your passion, and that's really why I so much wanted you to be on.
I'm totally.
Series.
Well, both Claire and I have to say, are totally stunned by this, always, constantly. We just think it's amazing. I mean, Claire goes and sits in the audience and hears this thing, and she says a hair stand up on. It's just, and I'm the same. To me, it's just everything.
Yeah.
I could sit and talk to people like this, or people all day and night. I could just go on and on and on.
Fantastic.
But people. But it is. I think it's so stunning. It's just amazing.
Yeah, and your passion really comes through. Your energy and everything.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Tell me something, Tony. If there is I know we've heard your message, but if there's one thing that you would want to leave people watching this interview with in terms of, something maybe, I know there's nothing for them to grasp or to see, but is there something that, that they can take and sort of, maybe
they can't
hold and maybe share, or maybe none of those things. But
no.
Is there something that you can
what
you
I
can
often
leave us
say to
with, so to
people,
speak? Not that I want you to leave,
No.
but
what I often say is very simple actually, and that is that what you long for is constantly with you.
Right. So it's already there.
It's already this.
Yeah.
What you long for
Yeah.
is already what is.
Yeah.
It never leaves.
It
is simply what is.
Yeah. And just to go back quickly to the question I was going to ask you about the creative process, just to clarify that, you're saying there is, in effect, no creative process. There's
no individual creative process.
Right, there is only oneness, if you like, creating.
Apparently.
Okay.
Yeah, so somebody painting or singing or whatever you like, it's just coming out of nothing.
Yeah.
But then the individual might think they're doing it.
Yeah.
But in reality, it simply is that which is whole, playing the game of, it's playing. Look, I'm here. This is me singing or painting or sweeping the road.
Fantastic. Oh, fantastic. Tony, thank you very much.
You.
That's been wonderful. Incredible.
I've enjoyed it.
Love your enthusiasm.
Yeah. Thank
really,
you.
Thanks very much. Okay, and thanks very much for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and join me next time for another Sharing Your Passion. Thank you.